Yesterday we were looking at this Vipashyana practice of emptiness on the basis of the person, that we were looking for the meaning that seems to be here. And very often it's recommended that when we start this Vipashyana practice, that's where we begin. And then on that basis, then we can expand out from there. In particular, to then look at the basis of the person, the body and mind. And so that's what we're going to do today. So now we're going to look at the body, look for the body. And we're going to do this on the basis of a very well-known 4 statements from the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra is one of the sutras, of course, from the Perfection of Wisdom teachings from the Buddha, the teachings describing this emptiness, and it's called the Heart Sutra because the heart there means essence. The Heart Sutra presents this view of emptiness in very short few words. And the very famous 4 statements that we're going to use as a basis for this meditation is: form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form also is not other than emptiness. Or in other words, because here form means body, other words we can say the body is empty, emptiness is the body, emptiness is not other than the body also is not other than emptiness. So let's investigate that in this meditation. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Using the out-breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. All the muscles around the eyes, soft and relaxed. In this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. Allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. setting the mind in a state of ease and relaxation, allowing it to come to rest in the present moment, and simply becoming aware of the sensations of the breath. In the Heart Sutra it says, form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form also is not other than emptiness. And when this is applied to the person, it means the body is empty. Emptiness is the body. Emptiness is not other than the body. The body also is not other than emptiness. So let's investigate. When you say my body, how does the body appear to exist? Does it seem to exist there objectively, from its own side, as a single thing? If it exists objectively, we must be able to find it. When we try to point to the body, where do we point? Often we point to the area of the chest. But is there anything there that is a body? Is the chest a body? Is the head a body? Is the arms a body? Is the legs a body? No matter where we point, they're pointing to things which are not bodies. Is the body simply a collection of those things? Each one of those things is not a body. So the collection of those things is a collection of things, none of which is a body. So where is there a body to be found in a collection of things, none of which is a body? Yet, other than those parts, what body is there? If you can't find a body, rest in that experience of not finding. The body is empty. However, that doesn't mean there's no body at all. The body exists. And because of emptiness, a body can appear and exist. Hence, emptiness is the body. The body exists depending on other factors. It depends on causes and conditions, such as the food we eat and all the bodily processes that are going on. Other than this continuous unfolding of causes and conditions, what body is there? And the body exists depending on its parts, such as the chest, head, arms and legs. Other than merely these parts, what body is there? And the body exists as something merely labelled upon these paths. Other than being merely labelled, what body is there? And therefore, because emptiness and body are like two sides of a coin, emptiness is not other than the body, and the body also is not other than emptiness. Again, let's start with a short review. So in the second half of this retreat, the main focus is the Vipashyana practice. So remember, the word Vipashyana or Vipassana means insight into nature of reality. And here in this retreat we're focusing on 4 insights. The first of those, of course, was impermanence. To come to an insight that everything's changing moment by moment. And that, of course, will, if we really can come to an experiential insight rather than just intellectual, which we all have now, I think, that will really have a very positive impact in our life. Because if we can experientially see things as just flow, it will become more difficult to have attachment to anything pleasant or aversion to anything unpleasant. So we'll notice our mental afflictions will reduce substantially. But also this insight into impermanence we saw is really the basis of the other insights, because if we can come to an insight into impermanence, that will be very helpful to come to an insight into suffering. Because now it seems like the source of happiness and suffering is out there. And if we can see that everything's changing moment by moment out there, then where is that source of happiness out there? And therefore, that will help to come to the insight into suffering. And remember, that insight into suffering, or dukkha, will help us to develop the aspiration to be free of suffering, because we'll realise that the source of suffering is within ourselves and we can do something about that. And then the insight into no self, that now we overinflate the sense of me. We're grasping onto this autonomous self, this me that seems to be something a little bit more than just the body and the mind. And here within the Four Noble Truths teachings, it said that that is our fundamental distortion. If we can overcome that, we can overcome all mental affliction, suffering, and achieve this goal of nirvana, liberation from suffering. And then we moved on to this insight into emptiness. Because in the Perfection of Wisdom teachings, the Buddha went on to say, well, actually also how we see the world is a problem. That even though there seems to be an independent objective world there's no such independent objective world, and therefore no independent subjective me. And so we saw there that things are not as they seem, that things do not exist independently. In other words, they do not inherently exist. They do not exist from their own side. They have no true existence because they're dependent phenomena. They arise dependently. Everything arises depending on causes and conditions, parts and labeling. That at the deepest level of understanding, we can understand that everything that we experience exists within our conceptual framework. But of course that doesn't mean we're hallucinating and we're just making things up. So remember, the challenge here to have a correct understanding of emptiness and dependent arising is, can we hold that understanding at the same time as holding the understanding there is functionality? Things work. That's the measure of understanding. And of course what we saw was that we don't realise that we are creating this world of experience, including creating the me part of the experience. We turn these lines we draw into boundaries. We see everything is having boundary, meaning everything seems to be separate and independent. There's an independent me here and a world made up of many separate, discrete, independent things out there. And of course we saw that by grasping in that way, in that suffering is causes chart, that leads to attachment to pleasant things, aversion to unpleasant things, and the whole mess starts from there. And so therefore, one way of speaking is we can say this emptiness practice is about realising no boundary. But no boundary, of course, does not mean we're all one, that we all become one. Because no boundary means that's not big and that's not small. But we still have big and small. They don't become one. They're not two, or non-dual. So realising no boundary doesn't mean we merge with everything else. No, there's still me. But that me only exists relative to everything else, like big and small. Dependency. And how we begin this emptiness practice, often it's very much recommended, we start by examining me, the person. And that's what we did yesterday. Where is this me, independent me? The one that seems to exist here objectively from its own side. Where is that? Look for that. And if we can't find it, that is an experience of emptiness. And we hold that experience as much as we can. And we saw there yesterday that if we don't have practiced any shamatha and our mind is completely distracted and very dull, it's going to be very difficult to do this investigation. And even if we manage to do it, it'll be difficult to hold that experience. So therefore, if we want this Vipashyana practice to work better, we need to start putting effort into shamatha. The more effort we put into shamatha, the easier to investigate and the better we can hold that experience. And of course, the big challenge here is that very often when we do this practice, and we're doing it well, we often slide into nihilism. Because for us now there seems to be just two options, two possibilities. Either there is this real independent me and real independent world, or there's no me and no world. And so since we are in this emptiness practice, we're undermining that, then we wrongly conclude, well, okay, there's no me and no world then. But remember, what we're undermining is not existence, we're undermining independent existence. And therefore, if we have a correct understanding, we will realise that, therefore, things exist dependently. And that is the middle way view, that emptiness and dependent arising, or emptiness and functioning in the world, are two sides of the coin. And there are two verses here from this text from Nagarjuna that we quoted in that chart. And he says, that which arises dependently and relatedly is explained as being empty. And that which is empty is dependently designated. This is the middle way path. Another verse, he says, whoever invalidates the emptiness of dependent arisings invalidates all the conventions of the world. And we saw also that in this practice we go through these three stages. The first was, of course, goal, this intellectual. First we need to receive some teachings and instructions on emptiness to get some idea about what emptiness is, so that we have a framework for our practice. But of course, if we leave it merely as an intellectual understanding, even it may be a very good intellectual understanding, that itself is not really going to change anything much in our life. Because intellectual understanding is not what's driving our behaviour. What's driving our behaviour, of course, is instinctive habit. And instinctive habit is really telling us there's an independent me here, independent world there. So we need to change that instinctive habit. And we do that by developing a new instinctive habit, and that's through meditating on emptiness. So then we meditate, and then we can go to the second stage of Nyam, which means taste or experience. We can have some taste or experience in meditation on emptiness. And then, depending on how strong that taste or experience is, it can have a residual effect on our mind after the meditation. And during that time that it's still affecting, we'll notice a few things. Again, our mind will probably be more calm, a little bit less mental afflictions, a little bit more joy in the mind, and also a little bit more feeling closer to others, a little bit more kindness and compassion. But of course that will wear off and then back to normal. So of course what we want to do is stabilise that experience. So we need to continue to work on Shamatha while we're working on Vipashyana, and eventually we can unify them, and then we can come to this direct insight or realisation into emptiness. And then we can really start to eliminate mental afflictions and suffering. And we saw that model very briefly yesterday, this 5-path model of how we move along the spiritual path in terms of this Vipashyana practice of emptiness. What I'd like to do now for the rest of today is have a slightly different approach, and that is approach that is used within the Mahamudra and Dzogchen systems of practice in Tibetan Buddhism. In these systems